if your devotion for Ayyappa is great, why in the world do not we get to it? Namaste. Welcome to this edition of Indic Chat presented by Indica and Indic Academy Network. Indic Academy, for those of you who are not familiar with this body, is a non-profit seeking to bring an intellectual, cultural, and spiritual renaissance based on Indic spiritual civilizational thought. It enables public intellectuals to discover their potential, transform them as thought leaders, and nurture them to become social entrepreneurs. Indic Academy also incubates, invests, and assists social enterprises delivering a product, service, or an experience that is based on Indic thought. These aims are achieved through our scholarships and grants, courses and programs, networks and platforms, and affiliates. Indic Academy provides scholarships to students and seeks to build relationships with institutions. Currently, they have an MOU with the Kanchi Math, Kanchi University, and Chinmaya Vishwavidyalaya. They provide fellowship, research, and travel grants to scholars and public intellectuals, publishing grants to digital platforms and first-time authors, grants for conducting projects, and entrepreneurial grants for nurturing entrepreneurship, such as the Pondi Lit Fest, Bharat Shakti, and the recently concluded Indic Teen Fest. They conduct online and offline courses and programs, including workshops, seminars, retreats, and conferences. As regards their networks and platforms, they enable public intellectuals to connect, cooperate, and collaborate with one another by nurturing various networks, such as Indica Network, Indic Activist Network, Indic Author Network, and Indic Economic Network. They're currently incubating platforms such as Indic Today, Indic Book Club, Indic Knowledge Systems, Creative India, Advaita Academy, and Indic Festivals. Under their affiliate programs, they act as financial and or thought partners to other social enterprises. Some recent examples are Garuda Prakashan and Ved Vapi Foundation. Now that I've introduced the force behind today's chat, let me introduce the three hugely inspiring ladies who I have the great fortune of conversing with today in this edition of Indic Chat that focuses on social media in the service of Dharma. Today we have amongst us Anjali Georgiou, who describes herself as a cultural enthusiast who worships and cherishes the greatness of the Indic civilization. Anjali ji is a founding member of both People for Dharma and Indic Collective. She is one of the prominent forces behind the Ready to Wait campaign and movement. Welcome, Anjali ji.
Welcome. Thank you, Dimple.
We also have Padma Pillai ji, the founder director of a lead generation company called Moving the Needle. Proud mom of a teenager who she has been homeschooling to shape him into a vital part of the society. Padma ji is a part of two social campaigns, Ready to Wait and Together We Can. Welcome, Padma ji. And now the third member of this August panel, Shilpa Nair ji, who's born in Mumbai but raised in Dubai. Dubai has been her karma bhumi all along, but that has not stopped her for contributing to various causes across the world while running a hugely successful business. A recipient of Pravasi Ratna Award 2018, Shilpa ji is the co-convener of Indian People's Forum and the president, People for Dharma. She coordinates with the embassy in Dubai to provide assistance to Indians in need. She gets distress calls from hospitals and jails even at midnight is what I'm told. Welcome, Shilpa ji.
Thank you. Namaste.
At the outset, I would request all the other joinees and participants to kindly mute their microphones till such time as we open the discussion to the audience in the concluding part of the program. In the interim, you can keep typing your questions in the chat box, which is provided on the right side. If you look below, there's a ribbon that says chat. You click on it and you can put in your questions. We would request you to kindly use the format name, colon, question. For example, if I were to post a question, I would put Dimple, colon, what is your question? With the guidelines discussed and agreed, even though unilaterally, let's begin from the start. Anjali ji, all of us know that you ladies have pioneered the Ready to Wait campaign, which attracted support from like-minded people, and it actually transformed into Ready to Wait movement. Can you tell us something about it, how it all happened?
Hi, Diva. Okay, first of all, that we three women although for the past 2 years we were campaigning and we were known to all of you by as forces behind this Ready to Wait campaign and talking about Sabarimala case and everything. But this is the first time we three are coming together in a live, not even in live in a live talk, but even in real world, we have never met before.
How wonderful.
So yeah, it's Indic Academy. This Indic Chat is the first platform where we three are coming together. And yeah, that's a real surprise. Like it's everything started from online, and then people never would imagine that total strangers would can really make something really big like this Ready to Wait campaign and culminating into People for Dharma. So let me recollect what all the events, what happened, what culminated into all that behind the People for Dharma and Ready to Wait campaign. So in last year, in 2 years ago, in I think somewhere around on 24th or around 24th or 23rd of August 2016, so I got a call from Times Now. So I live in Germany, and one fine day somebody called me from Bombay, and I was surprised how they got my number. And we are ordinary people, we never expect any mainstream media people to call us suddenly like that.
Extraordinary spirit that you have to accept.
But then I was a bit panicked. Like they asked me that we got your number from someone who, in fact, later I understood that is actually one boy who is my Facebook friend itself. Like we are all of us, our Facebook friend who was with us already in Facebook. So I was really panicked hearing that they wanted to talk to me. If I give a bite to Times Now. So I told, they told that they were told that I am an expert in Sabarimala. Then I was like, oh my God, I am not as that big an expert, but I can talk about it. But it would be even better to talk to my friend who has done quite a research on that on Veluthachan and Sabarimala. So that's how I directed them to Padma Jechi. So then they contacted her. And they tried to get her, they got her videos and talked to her, and we were expecting that to be telecasted as they told.
Okay.
So, but that was not telecasted. But because of that, since we were expecting her to be shown in that day's Arnab's show, we actually were eagerly waiting in front of the TV and we were watching it. So once we watched it, the program was about Haji Ali. That was the time when this Haji Ali case was in real discussion with the Tripti Desai and all. Okay. And that was on 27th August, I think, or 27th August, I think. So that evening we were, so already we three and few other people in Facebook was having a small chat group, which we formed because we actually, when we saw in Facebook that this false propaganda regarding Sabarimala temple has been going on, that a Christian character being introduced into the Sabarimala temple's story, the Ayyappa legend. So in order to find out the truth behind this Christian character, but first that was Rahul Ishwar who has been talking about it. So we actually went and we were ordinary trolls, if you say, that's like trolls we were. So we went and commented in his post and asked what is the truth, how that can be possible. So we were skeptical about this new Christian character in the Sabarimala legend. So we wanted to find out the truth. So we argued and tried to do some research and we couldn't find any convincing things. So we went and fought there, like as any trolls. So then Rahul gave some numbers phone number of people to prove his point. And usually, whichever phone number he gives or anything, no one cares. Everyone just fight in that Facebook post, or just comment and troll or whatever. But Padma Chechi actually called. She actually called that number and tried to find out what they will be giving. So in order to then, when she called and talked to the that was a number of a person associated with the family, which is associated in the Ayyappa legend. So it's a present generation guy. So she talked to them, and then she got a lot of information. Then we wanted a space for us to discuss all these things and share this knowledge within ourselves, because we cannot outright tell everything in public. And so we made all this, we all who know each other in Facebook and we knew that we all are of like-minded people. We joined together and made a group. That's how this one group was formed. And we did enough, some research and wrote some articles in Malayalam and all to tell about whatever we found out about this Veluthachan character. And before that itself, there is another one friend of us who is in our group named Krishna Priya. So she and me together had written an article about Sabarimala temple in Malayalam, whichever we could find out, And the same article I have written, made into English, and I have published in my internet. I think many of my Twitter followers are familiar with that article. So that all have been there. And then with this Veluthachan thing, we formed this group. And this all happened, I think, in January or in 2015, I think. But then we somehow, we had developed this association and discussions. So in that group, there was another one boy, Vishnu, who actually felt like it is better that some of us, he always tell that, see, you Chechis are better knowledgeable. You guys should be given opportunity to talk about things. But usually in the media and all, it's not such people who are being presented. So compared to those people, you people have more to offer. So with that mind, he just like that called Times Now and wanted to give us some opportunity, or maybe he felt like in the discussions which Arnab is doing in Times Now, maybe some of the devotee women also should have to be represented. Just like that, he called Times Now and gave my number, telling that I am some researcher and some big person who know a lot of things about Sabarimala. That's how they called me. But I was panicked. So I directed them to Padma Chechi, and they got the bite of Padma Chechi, and she talked to them, and we waited for the thing, that to be telecasted. But that day, what happened in News Hour is that her video was not telecasted. Okay, fine. Like, we are anyway not insignificant people, so it doesn't matter. But what happened is that with this Haji Ali case, Arnab, that everyone knows, Arnab has been putting Sabarimala into all this, and this right to pray campaign is something very precious for him. So he really, with Tripti Desai and what all comments that have been happening, all that discourse that was happening in that day in that news hour, that really pained us. We really got, I don't know, we were really sad that we wanted to tell actually in the initial mood of us was that we wanted to, usually when some debates happen, when we tweet tagging Times Now and News Hour and all. Arnab is not in the Twitter, but still, I think so that even for other journalists also, these things will help them to, they will be reading this. That is the whole idea about us tweeting things in tagging people, even media people. So we thought, okay, we do something, we use what we have, that is our Twitter and Facebook handles, and we talk to Arnab, so that Arnab get convinced and let him mellow down a bit all his attacks, not attacks, you see, all his, he is so sharp, strong and loud. So let him mellow down a bit. That was our only interest in the beginning. So we tweeted, putting Arnab's poster, telling Arnab, you should know that temples in Kerala is different from temples in North India. See, you have to understand that the diversity of India is maintained by maintaining all these various unique, rituals and all. Then that's how, then we were like, in that chat group, when we were talking, we made this hashtag, like, ready to wait. Like, we are ready to wait. That's how the hashtag was originated. And then that was taken into the public by using this poster and the tweets. If you search in Twitter and all, you will find that poster. And also Padma Chechi had already posted in Facebook telling about all that what she felt. After that, is a small stint with Times Now. And then that was on a Friday. So we had, then we were talking and everything. And then we just thought, okay, we put Facebook a post. I put a post regarding Sabarimala. That also got a lot of publicity. I mean, a lot of people came, liked it and shared it. Like, it was, I never got that much likes and share before. So then we were like, we should do more. And we thought we will get some photos of holding the placard and telling. That is something which we can do without anybody's help. So, and we asked other women also, and then we contacted some other women who are also our friends in Facebook and asked that we all do this. And then Suja Pavitran and Smita and Radhika, many other women also joined us, and we all started putting this. Then media also took it up, English media. I don't know why the mainstream media took it up that day. Maybe they felt like it is a kind of, we are anyway addressing Arnab. I mean, the first tweets were addressing Arnab. It was actually a counter to Right to Pray campaign of Times Now. Maybe that might be the reason. I don't know. I mean, considering all the other events, maybe that is the reason. Whatever. Even NDTV carried our news.
Wow, that is something.
Yeah. NDTV carried, Indian Express, Deccan Chronicle, all this media. But not surprisingly, interestingly, that Malayalam media haven't carried anything about us. Only 2 or 3 online portals, and they are only them. But that's how it is in Malayalam. But lot of Malayali women really joined us, because we all share same sentiments, and everybody were actually waiting for somebody to do something so that we get an opportunity to speak. So far, whatever was been happening was kind of like, somebody will go to court. Somebody means somebody from Lutyens Delhi, or some left liberal feminist will go to court for seeking their rights seeking some rights against some temple or Hindu practice. And the concerned temple will be party of the case, because they will be the respondent. And the government and the Devasam board will be in there. Nobody asks what is the opinion of the normal devotees.
True.
And even the news discussions, all that noise we hear in the media, there also no one invite any normal people to know what is their stand. It's kind of like, when that idea that white man's burden, it's somewhat kind of a brown version of it. That they really think that these unwashed, stupid Hindus have no clue how to speak. So they no one cares what they need. They just want to empower all these poor, stupid, pagan natives, and they just take care of the, they think we are the ones who want to speak for it, and what we want is what Hindus want. Actually, it is not. That is what we wanted to speak. And while tweeting, all these ideas come up and started speaking. And more, like we wrote in Facebook, and everyone resonated, and more women who share the same opinion joined, and it became a big movement. And then I think Arnab Goswami it felt like that is so nice of him. Like, he really felt that, yeah, this is against right to pray. That means I should make a debate between right to pray and ready to wait so that that can be balanced. That is really great of him that he did that. So our women in Padma and Shilpa, everybody went there. And that was then our woman. And for 1 second or 1 second, if you notice that video, you will see Arnab went speechless.
Oh, wow.
That is something which I think that is a very big achievement for a novice, for a woman who, like Padma Chechi was asking about he was using Vedas to counter our argument or something, and she asked, like, is there temple in Veda or something like that? Then he was confused because he had no idea. So the thing is, for 1 second, he couldn't tell anything. So that really is a great achievement for a novice. I find that to be a very, very, a moment for a normal online Twitter people to feel that, yeah, we are also something. we can also do something, that feeling. And then, meanwhile, friends and others, well-wishers advised us to go for the case because anyway, it doesn't matter whatever discussions is happening offline or online. What matters is that what Supreme Court is going to, the Supreme Court verdict, that is all what matters. So it's not that you have to convince the media or convince the public. You have the judges also should be convinced. That is the only, the real logical culmination of whatever narrative is being set. Then Shilpa Chechi was she was ready to go for the court, and she was so strong in that. And that's how we thought, okay, then we make some trust or society, a legal entity, and go, because that will be more easy rather than some random individuals going, or, this is just a hashtag campaign. So a hashtag can be used by anyone. So if tomorrow some random person use the hashtag and tell some stupidity, that also will come on our head. So we didn't want to be that much weak or, delicate in our discourse. They were very vulnerable in our discourse. So we wanted to be, to our side, to be a bit more legally strong, because we don't want anything illegal to happen from our side. So if at all somebody do some violence on using ready to wait hashtag, that to also come on our head. We really didn't want to do anything like that. We just wanted to express our opinion and tell the world that the devotee women who are capable of talking for themselves are telling this, and we have this opinion. And that resonates with every other Ayyappa devotee in South India, not just Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh, and even beyond. So that's how we started the People for Dharma. So we had few friends in Chennai who offered the help to all the running around and the process of running establishing a legal organization, registration process and everything. This Ravilochanan Iyengar and co. So that's how they came into picture, like, in this ready to wait. We got some help of men also in that sense. But to tell that really helped us, that they are very learned, really learned people about Hindu scriptures, very young guys. That's a model for everyone, that young people who have various kind of positivity, various strength, and they all joined together through online and formed this organization and went to the court. And yeah, that is how our what I can say, this ready to wait movement, which budded from normal trolls in the social media, culminated into a real activism stage, and it's in a productive manner. So that's the story.
Thank you so much, Anjali. That was really informative. Padmaji, would you like to talk about the initial response to the movement? So I'm sure it could not have all been very positive because I'm sure that, such initiatives generally drive flag from the opposition. There must have been fence sitters, apathetic. I mean, as was evident from the TV discussions, we could see that there were people who appeared clueless but still got the chance to articulate in those TV discussions and all. So how did you carry in the face of such circumstances? Please tell us. One second. I think your mic is on mute. Let me unmute your mic. Just a second. Yeah. Please go on.
Yeah. So like Anjali said, common women who were just, in social media, writing a few things, maybe discussing about various issues, all that, but suddenly coming together for a cause. And it's Swami Ayyappan who has brought us together, this entire group of people, because we started connecting and having a common group for this topic, though not about women's entry. And we were just common, we still are just common people. So for us, there is a sort of an anger that bubbled up inside when we started off, and we said that, the kind of rhetoric that is going around about this subject was very, very distressing. As a devotee myself, it was very distressing for me personally, and all the friends that we connected, we shared this opinion that why are we being subjected to such kind of drivel, half-baked knowledge and such a sense of entitlement from the other crowd. As if we are all pathetic, low-life people who have no clue about anything, any constitution, who have been suppressed by men into thinking that, we should not ever question such norms or stuff like that. And we were really upset that we were being belittled.
Yes.
So that was the point where we started. So the outrage was there in us. But little did we know that our outrage was something. The outrage on the other side was like a tsunami of offense. But what helped us is the overwhelming positive response from people around us. When we started off, when we said that this is what we feel and we want to speak about it. That was the only thing that we started with. We said we want to speak about it. We are not going to agree. And the campaign that, the hashtag that Anjali and one of our other friends sat together and it's come out of their brains. It's beautiful. We did not want to offend anybody. We did not want to fight. We said we are ready to wait. So waiting is something that is in our right. Nobody can come and tell us that we are tools of patriarchy or something just because we say we will wait. But the response of the devotees around us, see, I am born and brought up in Kerala. My family has been going on the Sabrimala pilgrimage for many years. I have been taken in when I was young. My mother went for the first time when she was 55. I've seen the kind of devotion that, has been practiced in the whole village where I have lived. So the response from everybody when we started speaking up, people started walking up to me or people started messaging me. My mother got messages from people because I don't stay in Kerala. They said that this is something that we wanted to say.
Wow.
And that is the response that, suddenly just took us up. The kind of response that Ready to Wait, the hashtag, the kind of people from Australia, Singapore and all sending photos to us from Murugan Temple. We were stunned and shocked. So the initial response was very positive and we were literally given a lot of courage by that positive response saying that we are not alone. And we had the responsibility on our shoulders that we were speaking for these tens of thousands of people now.
Yes.
And then there was the other side. Like Anjali said, the trolls on Facebook we could manage because we were masters at it. We were fighting with, being in Kerala and Malayalam Facebook, it's full of Yuktivadis, full of Marxist people. So we have, we have sharpened our swords battling with them in Facebook, and this was fine for us. Yes. We were used to doing that, giving them, answers or trolling them back and things like that. But this went beyond. This was not just then people speaking to us in Facebook. It was media reporting. If you would read the articles which were put out by the Happy to Bleed campaigns or the others who wanted to get entry into the temple, it was vicious. So mainstream media was not carrying us at that till that time, and I think Deccan Chronicle, News Minute, and few other people started carrying us when more and more people started putting photos of ready to wear. And then, like Anjali said, whatever happened, we were pulverized in Arnab's debate, but he gave us the opportunity to come out and speak to the nation.
Yes.
That program had that reach that nothing else probably could have given us. And he was completely against our notion, and he came down like a ton of bricks on us. But that said, those 2 or 3 seconds of what we could speak reached out to people, and then the Twitter, the crowd. Then there was a poll. I think there was a poll by Times Now about this, and it was probably the first time in Times Now's history that Times Now lost the poll, and it was overwhelming. But the opposition came from different areas, but the consistent opposition has always been from the postmodern, modernist, leftist version of feminism, which tries to tell us, women, what is best for us. It is somebody who comes in from somewhere with no clue about our dharma, no clue about our temples or methods or anything, about rituals or traditions or whys and wheres. They just want to tell us that this is ideal for women. And we are the arbitrators of what is ideal. And those were the people who hunted us. And for them, the sight of a few common women coming out and expressing their opinions and in a strong way was just not digestible. They were so-called feminists, but they did everything in the books. Many of the journalists included made such nasty comments about us. It turned personal in many cases. And the campaign itself, they said that it is like ready to sati, ready to die. They started putting out counter campaigns that these women are ready to sati. So then it started making us think that do these people not understand the difference between sati and rituals in a temple? So the opposition from the postmodernist feminists stems from a place where they think that they are consumers. Everything is a consumerist attitude. They say we are consumers, and everything that we demand and that we need should be handed to us in a platter. And we set the terms of engagement. And this idea of feminism comes from the Semitic culture. These people actually have no original idea, so they are copying what is happening in America and in Europe, and they bring it over and they Indianize it in the context and push it down. And so that is why Hindus are their best targets, because in America they have the white people that they can attack. Here we are the unfortunate whites in India, the Hindus. So we get slammed for everything. But the fact is that Indic civilization does not fit into the narrative set by this feminism, because we don't have a male god. Any Semitic religion, if you go to, has only a male god. All the apostles are male. All the teachers are male. All the prophets are male. If you have an angel who comes down, that's male.
Feminine is completely missing. There is no concept of.
There is no feminine. So that is where the narrative of feminism came in, where the women had to fight to be seen.
Yes.
Here, an Indian man, he goes into the puja room and he sees a Devi sitting there in full splendor with arms in all her eight hands. That is where the core disconnect is felt. Why Indian women do not fall into the ambit of this so-called feminism that our opponents say. It's because our religion itself places women at a different level. Yes, we are considered different from men, because we are.
Yes, accept it.
So difference does not mean unequal. Equality does not mean sameness. Does not mean that we suddenly become androgynous, and that is. So this concept of feminism that came in from there, this was copied by all these people from JNU, from all those places, Jadavpur University and all that. And then suddenly this became mainstream. And then they decided that this diversity that the religion of Hinduism offers in terms of rituals and tradition. We have women who do Varalakshmi Vratam, men don't do.
Yeah.
Why should women be made to pray for the health of their husbands? I mean, it went beyond anybody who has a minimum level of intellect could understand that this narrative was stemming from something which is very un-Indian. But our biggest opponents to start with are these people who felt that as Indian citizens, we are consumers. The courts and the governments and the temples and every institution should meet our demands, should be at our beck and call for all of our needs and wants. And the limits of their wants were set by themselves. So it went on to a level of infantilism. They were like becoming like children, throwing a tantrum when their needs were not met. And we saw a full-fledged tantrum with respect to Sabarimala women's entry, and before that in Shani Shingnapur.
Absolutely.
It was a full-fledged tantrum thrown by infantile human beings who just could not accept the fact that some things in life are left the way it is because it has worked for centuries, it has not harmed anybody, it has in fact benefited millions of people. No, their limited intellects, it's like a child who needs a toy, who says, no, I want it, and rolling on the floor and throwing a tantrum.
Absolutely.
So that was those people were the beginning, the origin of this Happy to Bleed, Bhumata Brigade, Tripti Desai and everybody. And they were the ones who pushed back initially. And we were willing to take their pushes because we were also opposing them. Then came the other levels, which really jittered us. We were expecting Marxists and all those people only to attack us. But there were people within Hinduism itself who have this skida of progressiveness that has bitten them. Sorry to say this, progressiveness does not mean that you suddenly think that it is okay to change everything that does not fit your schedule. You might have chosen a life to live in an apartment, so you might not have a tree in your angan. It's fine, it's your choice. But when somebody has a tree in their angan and they want to do puja under it, and then you say that that's very regressive, that's crossing your line. That is when you cross over from your lane and cut into somebody else's lane. And this has been happening with a lot of Hindu people who suddenly find themselves unable to keep up to these traditions, and then suddenly decide it's not my fault, it's because these are all not relevant anymore.
Religion of convenience.
Religion of convenience. So those are the ones who came and said, no, look, Sabarimala was having a restriction because it was a jungle. Now there is transport. So it's easy to go now. Why not we go? And we are looking at each other's faces, not literally, among Facebook and like, what is this guy saying? We are asking each other because these are the people that we find it very hard to counter because they are our brothers. At the end of the day, they are in the Hindu journey with us. So we find it very hard to counter. We don't want to offend them, but we really need to talk to them. Then Anjali and her, super brain, she started writing articles left, right, flying it all over the place. It got published. Speaking to these people, these fence sitters or, dharmic or Hindu progressives, speaking to them and saying that this is diversity in our culture and this is something that we have to preserve and things like that. Many people came over.
Oh, wow.
Many people did. But still, there are a bunch of people who believe that, all a Hindu needs are Vedas. You read Vedas and you have to imagine Parabrahman in front of you. And that's it. And then you meditate, close your eyes and meditate. They do not have any botheration of a person who might be so sunk in misery in their life that when they close their eyes, they get depressed. They need to go to a temple and stand in front of a powerful being and say that, please help me. So there is no accommodation for the psychological needs of various levels of people. Some people say that I have arrived. I have become an Advaiti and I have become a Vedanti and I have arrived. So all the other people who have arrived are like those, heathens, like they say in the Bible, those pagans and heathens who are people who need those stones and pictures to worship. And that kind of disdain, that kind of narrative where, we were looked at as people who have not reached anywhere in the spiritual journey, who were trying to impose these kind of regressive systems into people, not allowing people to rise out of their misery and come into Vedanta. So those crowds started coming. And then obviously the set of people who, once it started clicking, the campaign went somewhere. People who were objecting to us also came in and said, no, we were also part of it.
Wow.
He started it. He gave the idea to Anjali. There are people So multi-level opposition. But But see, and Shilpa was attacked unnecessarily because she came in and she put her money where the mouth is. None of us could do that. She came in and she said, "I'm starting this trust. I'm going to, come physically travel so many times from Dubai, and she has a business of her own. And she comes and she does this work, and then she's randomly attacked and she is misquoted in media." Saying that she has asked for somebody to be beaten up or stopped at Shabarimala. There was misquoting, there was random stuff. So this was the kind of opposition that we were not prepared for. But I think because we all of us are believers, none of us are in this for just the political reason. We feel that Ayyappan has brought us together, and we feel that he is there every time that we stutter, stammer, falter. He is there. He'll rise us up. He'll join us together. But the thing about this group has been that everybody consistently plays to our strengths. We are not competing with each other. And as a social media group where we have not met each other, we were not friends in personal life before, but we came together for this campaign, and ups and downs, yes. Discussions, arguments, yes. But at the end of the day, when somebody calls me and says that, there is somewhere that you have to give an interview, I put on my clothes and I go. When some question comes up randomly, Anjali just takes on her computer and writes the article. Whenever there is a hearing, whatever is happening in Shilpa's life, she is there. And there is a huge bunch of, I would call them kids, because I am much older than them, on Facebook who, keep us, who boost us, who bring us articles, who research, who send us points. And overall, they, boost our morals every day on the group. So this is how it works. We would have fallen flat if it not were for that kind of collective strength.
Wow. Pretty
Yes.
interesting. Very, very inspiring. Shilpaji, People for Dharma.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so it was an outcome of the success of Ready to Wait camp movement. So it began first and then People for Dharma came into being. So can you please tell us something
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Dimple. And thank you, Indic Academy, for organizing this event so that we can, online, we can be in touch with a lot of people who would like to clear their doubts on what Ready to Wait is and People for Dharma is. To add to my colleagues, Anjali and Padma, I'd like to just briefly say a few words on, what went through with Ready to Wait. Ready to Wait, when we started off, I should say, as you have now heard them, it was not a very easy journey for us. It was a very difficult path with a lot of pebbles and stones and all thrown at us. So we were, at times we were desperate also. We were like in a state of despair, why are they doing this to us? So what I could see from this is that they have actually classified us into a different category. It is a form of racism. It is a form of prejudice. When they see modern women coming forward and viewing their opinion, it is not taken as as devotees' voice. It's not taken as like that. How can a modern woman become a devotee? This is their question. Yeah. How can a person like Padma and Anjali have been born and brought up in Kerala? Padma is running her own business in Hyderabad and very successfully. Anjali is in Germany doing very well in her life. They cannot accept this. Myself, I'm from Dubai and running my own business again. So they cannot accept people like this, coming forward with their voice as a devotee. So they started, making up stories, and they started, I think, bringing up scandalous, threads. I think they will become better novel writers than, or a Mills and Boon writer than, whatever they're doing on Facebook. So we were attacked. We were completely attacked. Why are these women, Anjali, for example, she has a Christian name, but she is more Hindu than I feel many of us put together. Sometimes the way she goes, and sometimes I myself is a bit mild. I just take it easy, but she doesn't leave that. She just goes behind them. She just goes and fights. So she was attacked for her name. She was attacked that she was an evangelist or she's somebody. They come up with these like really strange stories. And Padma was attacked, for being outright and, outspoken. I was attacked because I went to Supreme Court and I wore lipstick. That was my... yeah. And so these were the the kind of people who sort of like started. So we were like, we never sort of like went back. We never retracted. We kept on going, because what kept us going is what Padma just now said, the many supporters we had, and the support what we saw, and of course Lord Ayyappa, who was all along with us and who is all along with us, as devotees. If you see the common man, on the street, an auto rickshaw guy or a grocery guy, or any common housewife, okay, if you compare their devotion and our devotion, is the same level. So to speak, so we are actually, we wanted to voice their opinion, nothing more than that. So this was how we started off Ready to Wait. When we started off, we never knew that we would actually get so much of support. We got support not only from all over the country in India, also from abroad. Many ladies came up and they, held the board and they said, ready to wait. We are ready to wait till the age of 50 to see Lord Ayyappa. So we were like very, very happy to see this. But the real fight was happening in the Supreme Court. And online campaign, everything was good because that was an influence. It could influence the decision makers. But at the same time, the Supreme Court is where the real fight is going on. And we wanted our voice to be heard there. So that is when Anjali, we have a team of like 9 people: Aravinda Lochanan, Aishwarya, Ravi Lochanan, Akshay, Srihari, Madhusudanan, and this is Shalini. Okay, so this was our initial team who came forward and said, let us do this. Let us form a trust and let us be party to the case. Let us intervene in the case so that we can tell our part of the argument, and we can express ourselves as devotees. So that's how we formed People for Dharma. And as a divine intervention, we got 2 very good lawyers, advocate on record Suvidhat Sundaram, and pleading advocate Sai Deepak, who is now known as the deity's advocate, because the way he put up his presentation, even our Chief Justice of India has actually commended him. So we're very happy on what he has done to us and for us, and for himself. He's also a big devotee, actually. So when I went to the Supreme Court for a hearing 2 years back, this was not the scenario, actually. Our chance didn't come as such. And there was some other lawyer from another group who was talking. And at that point of time, our Supreme Court was like, no, why women are not entering Sabrimala? I can't understand this. Because, some people say Lord Krishna is their son, some people say Lord Krishna is their father, but I mean, that's not the thing. Like, why, women cannot enter? This is like, it's not logical, So what they don't understand is that logic is one thing, but belief is also another thing, like, which is very important for devotees. Mm-hmm. So when I came out of Supreme Court, when I came out and we had a press conference, we had a lot of journalists coming up and asking us questions. And there was one girl who was like around 20 years. Lord Ayyappa, motherly feeling towards Lord Ayyappa. Why can't I go and see? So I said, yes, definitely you should go and see Lord Ayyappa. If you have motherly feeling, you should go and see Lord Ayyappa, but not this Lord Ayyappa. There is the same Lord Ayyappa in a baby form in Kuruthupura. You can go and meet him there and give your motherly feeling there. So she understood this point. There was another group who said that, look at this. I mean, you people should be thankful to feminists who are trying to enter the temple because they are fighting for your rights. I said, Hindu women don't need any help. We know how to fight our own battles. If there is a problem in our system, we will rectify it ourselves. We don't need outside help for that, but very much thank you for that. So there were like so much of such questions going on. But fortunately, now we can see that the Supreme Court has actually started understanding, and we are very thankful to Lord Ayyappa and our advocates and our supporters for this. Now, People for Dharma, when we formed, we chose that name, People for Dharma, because we didn't put a specific Lord Ayyappa name or a Sabrimala name. Why? Because we were very clear on a point that there are going to be more attacks on Hindu temples and Hinduism and all that. And we would like to stand for that. We would like to fight for those causes and issues. So that is why we chose this name, People for Dharma. And now, People for Dharma's main motive is to to protect the native traditions and beliefs of Hinduism and Hindu temples, along with Sabrimala. We have taken up other cases as well. Now we have many cases, in fact, who people have come forward. People have, organizations, people, temples, they have come forward having the confidence in People for Dharma, and they have come forward. And for example, one small example I'll tell you is our the famous Sri Padmanabha Swami temple in Trivandrum. The famous temple, who's now famous for its wealth, actually, but that temple is, really, the deity is a great, this thing. Now, what happens in Sri Padmanabha Swami temple is that long before the royal family, the royals of the Travancore royal family, they used to be, custodians of this temple. And there was a tradition at that time that the Maharaja or the crown prince or even the princess who can give birth to the heirs of the royal family, they were allowed to come in the morning. I mean, they had this ritual where they would come in the morning and they would brief to the deity about the affairs of the state.
Wow.
And now that the state is not in their hands, they still follow this ritual. They come in the morning and they talk to the deity and brief him and give him a description on what is happening in the temple. So this is going on. Now, what has happened is that the state government has now put a case saying that why are they allowed like this? And why are they given privilege like this? Now they are not in power, they should not be. So they have filed a case asking for this explanation. So we have now intervened in this case, and the next hearing, our lawyers will be talking to the judge. So these are the things, small things we do. We take up Tiruvattar, Adikeshwar temple, another one. Everybody knows, People for Dharma has taken that up. So I would actually request every Swabhiman Hindu out there who is listening to this at the moment to please support People for Dharma in any way you want, because the thing is that not everybody can go to court, not everybody can write like Padma and Anjali, not everybody can talk well or present things well, not everybody can put in money, finance. So in any way, whatever is possible for you, you can contribute to People for Dharma, and let us join hands and fight for our dharma.
Cool.
Thank you.
So, I would request people who are watching this video to definitely follow the People for Dharma Twitter handle at least, so that you can engage more with the team.
Yes, we have Twitter. We are very active on Twitter. We are active on Facebook in the same name, People for Dharma. And our website is also there, which is www.peoplefordharma.org.
Cool. Thank you so much, Shilpa ji. Anjali ji, in our personal interactions, I have seen you repeatedly credit the success to volunteers and members of the team, and I find it very amazing. So, can you tell me more about your team? Are your supporters only from the south of India, Kerala? Is it a homogeneous mix, or do you have volunteers from across regions, languages, cultures? Could you tell us something about that?
First of all, this started in social media, like Twitter and Facebook, and that is a borderless platform.
Yes.
And it's a very democratic and a borderless platform, which is really the most liberal platform which is available in the current world. And in Twitter, so once this, we ourselves and our other friends and those whom we could personally ask, put out their photos with ready to wait written in the placard. That was the initial step which we did.
Okay.
But then after that, whoever had put the photos, like this will be a couple of people which we can really name, But after that, whoever who have put out their photos, they all are basically did that because they are part of this movement, because they all have the same message to convey, which we also wanted to convey. And yeah, then we will be, and even the Malayalis, you know, the people from Kerala are all over the world. First of all, like most Malayalis are NRKs now. So from Sydney, I think Melbourne, Kerala Samajam, you know, Kerala, London, various parts of India. There is a lot of Ayyappa temple in various parts of India. Wherever there is a Malayali, there is an Ayyappa temple. Yes. So in New York, there is a lot of Ayyappa temples. So all those temples have Ayyappa Seva Samajam. And all those people really, you know, seeing this, we made a Facebook page for Ready to Wait. And we used to get a lot of photos from various quarters to that Facebook page. And in Twitter, like I remember, see, Neha Srivastava, she is not from Kerala. Ayyappa is basically kind of a regional deity, but she had her photo. Lot of people in Twitter, you know, from various Garima, you know, that Twitter handle Lavanya, Sign of 5. Various people have really put photos with Ready to Wait, and Sankrant Sanu, Nitin Sridhar, and then many people, like another boy, his name I forgot. So many people have written articles. You know, we didn't know that these people, they all are interested in it or not. But suddenly we saw articles in Swarajya, India Facts, and a lot of people. It became an overwhelming support from various quarters. That really made it a huge moment. And later on, also, like people who were confused, like in North India, the temple concept of temple itself is different from the South India. So it was not that easy for them. Like in North India, people can actually go and touch the deity and do the puja. Like for Shivling, they can do the milk abhishekam and everything. But in South, in Kerala, we really don't touch the deity. We don't even touch we really keep away, and we just can see, have the darshan. So the concept is totally different. So that unfamiliarity of the concepts really made many people in North India to confused about all this. And with all that modern notions together, they all thought, what is this? Women cannot enter. What discrimination is it? That's a sudden reaction comes to anyone. But I think that is very important in any discourse, any kind of a discourse narrative we try to set, that regional language can convey many things to the people of that particular culture, and that is quite a different method we have to follow to make the region people, to convey our narrative or whatever we want to tell. That's a different method. But in a pan-India approach, we need to have a different approach. Like about Sabarimala, whatever I have tweeted, I have explained in many articles. I don't think that kind of an explanation is needed in Malayalam.
Understood.
Because every Malayali basically share the same opinion, and they don't need explanation from us to understand, because they know better. I got a lot of information from various people. Even when this case came up last time, in the last month, we actually saw one, that was really, I really felt so humbled with that a woman from Kerala, who is an auto rickshaw driver, she seeing all that various news reports regarding the talks in the court and all that condescending attitude towards the system and the temple, she felt so pained. So she told in she made a live video in Facebook. In her video, she told that why she is making this video is because when she read the newspaper, she felt like she should tell something. So from out of that feeling that she need to tell something, at least she has a Facebook, she made a live video. In that she explained things which we otherwise were explaining elaborately in English or Hindi. Like in North India or to others, we need to explain all these things very much. But here, everybody knows all these points. So, and various other women seeing this video, many other women came up with their videos. You could see a lot of videos of ordinary women, ordinary Malayali women, not even from Kannada, one woman from Mangalore, various people, women from various quarters made their videos telling what is Ayyappa for them. Even mothers who have already gone to temple, Shabrimala, after reaching 50 years old. They were explaining how it is to go there and how it was for them to wait. And what is the essence of this all concepts. These women were explaining so easily. So that is why we didn't need to explain too much of things in Malayalam. Whatever we could, we had to tell in Malayalam were mostly about that some leftists were attacked, since every Padma Pillai, Shilpa Nair, Radhika Menon, everyone has these Nair surnames. They tried to attack the Sambandha system of man, using that, attack the Nair community. So we had to, our friend only, Durga, she wrote an article regarding how a Nair woman is so empowered that all these abuses which you try to hurl on the Nair community for them having that freedom to choose their life partner as they wish in their past. So the abuse, what they was trying to attack is that showing the Nair guy putting a placard ready to wait when the Nair woman is having some other person in the bed. That is a kind of an attack which is very casteist. But it is attacked to an upper caste community, so no one cares. It's so natural and very nice for these caste warriors, those people who are against caste in their opinion. But in reality, when it came to when some women spoke up, they attacked those women in the most derogatory way, which really go against their principles, which they stand for, the feminist principles and the anti-caste equality principles. So such things. So a bit of negative, for those kind of negative things, we needed more, reactions in Malayalam. But not to make the people understand, because people really know everything. Or just that they needed someone to speak that into all these noise makers in the English channels and to the code. That's it. But for in English, we had to explain things, the basics of temple, the basics regarding the rituals and the traditions and the basic concepts. That was where more we had to concentrate on. So identifying that the various settings of audiences need various kind of explanation, that really worked well, I guess. And even I think Lavanya wrote in Hindi. And if somebody asks, someone talk to us in Hindi or English, or even the people Tamil, our other members and people for Dharma, they are Tamils, and they got a lot of material for the the research material, the ancient documents to present in the court. We got it from old Tamil people from Tamil Nadu, who are, because Tamil Nadu is a center. See, Shabrimala is now in Kerala. It's in Western Ghats. It's on the Kerala side, but the other side of the temple is Tamil Nadu. So this all area is actually part of this temple's ecosystem. Yes. So there are a lot of Shasta devotees who are real Shasta Upasakas, who have been spending their generations on worshiping Lord Shasta, Lord Ayyappa. So they had a lot of materials. So many people came forward offering that for us to use for our benefit. Likewise, in in many, I think that is a pan-Indian, a pan-Indian movement it became, because we could really engage every kind of people who are actually based with every language. Like it's not, I think all these liberal kind of people, all these leftist people, they actually try to divide with all these fault lines, all these subcultures, sub-identities we have. They try to make it, use it to divide us.
Yeah.
But instead, if we use those to identify each community, each culture, and address each culture and unite together for the greater good, that can do wonders. That is what I understand with all this. And likewise, what Sai, our lawyer Sai Deepak, what he argued in the court, or all that points, that were many of the things were new for the court. I don't remember CJ, our Chief Justice or Justice Nariman, one of them actually told that Sai's arguments were very instructive. But for a normal person in Kerala, a normal Hindu in Kerala, those arguments are just like that. They know that. That is there. Like our ordinary people are well aware of a lot of things, but we are not getting a lawyer to speak usually. But now we have a lawyer to speak. That's the difference. Put it that way.
Wow. So what I actually got from what you described is like, we need to celebrate each other's cultures. And if we know more than 1, 2, 3 languages, it's good for us only, because then we get to understand each other's cultures. I mean, I have seen a lot of, as you rightly said, Neha and other people from the north of India, east, and seen them supporting or trying to trend the hashtag myself. I've seen it. So I guess because you use strategy of communication of using different languages, that was a brilliant spark of inspiration, actually. Padmaji, I'm coming over to you now. In addition to being the face of Ready to Wait, you're also a part of a campaign called Together We Can. Now, I realized that in Ready to Wait, you are the leader. In Together We Can, you are a part of the group. So how is it different working as a leader here and as a supporter here? Tell us about that.
No, I start off by disagreeing with you. In both the campaigns, actually, there are no leaders, there are no followers. We are all in it as equal, as actually there is a sense of sisterhood and brotherhood that comes in, because the more you get actively involved and work together towards the common goal, then the more you personally start feeling attached to the people involved. And and that makes it very easy for us to probably Anjali being very younger than me. But if she tells me something that Deji, you do this way, and this is how it is done, or this is the information, I'll just shake my head and do it, because the trust levels are so high now that we are into sisterhood. So there is no leader, no follower. Any of those concepts do not exist.
Wow.
We that is probably why many other social media campaign groups which start off fizzle off. Because there will be some people who are trying to gain some traction over it in other ways. I think the lesson from both my campaigns, Together We Can and Ready to Wait, is that your only intention should be the goal. And if you have side motives, the whole campaign will flop. So to speak of Together We Can, it's for a specific, very limited specific cause. My son, he's 14 years old and he is on the autism spectrum disorder. Since I'm from Kerala, I have a lot of friends and, in that field, in therapy and all that. And the autism community is such that if a child gets a new diagnosis, the first thing they do is, after coming home from the doctor, they try to network and find out who else has this condition, because it's an unknown thing. Autism is something that is not common that has no similarities between two kids and all that. So the network, they approach other mothers, other parents who have children with autism, and then they get into support networks and things like that. And we do it very naturally because we have gone through this parents before us have helped us cope. So it's a natural kind of a cycle that we do. So I am part of many of those autism help groups in Kerala, where parents just bounce thoughts, certain very simple to very complex questions about how we deal with the autism and all that. And we started noticing people talking about kids getting injured inside therapy centers because it was closed doors, and many of the autistic kids are not able to speak. So unlike Ready to Wait, this was a campaign that started on the ground and then came to social media. So the ground campaign was that we went to therapy centers and we requested them. We said, please keep the door open, have a CCTV camera, have only qualified people and all that. But therapy scene in Kerala is very random and there are no regulations. The government is absolutely not involved. We went to the collector. The collector said, which he asked us, I mean, common women, mothers. The collector asked us, which is a section under which I can book a therapy center. And we were like baffled, section, ye kahan se aa gaya suddenly, and that is when we found out that there is no section. The therapy center can do anything that they like and nobody is there to catch them because there is no section in which to book them. So then we decided that, we need to go again to court. See, the final ashray of anybody, any citizen in this country is a court. So we wanted to go to court. But the limitations of mothers with children in autism, not many people can fit in, not many people can come in. Then we came to social media. Then we started a campaign. We started talking to people. We had a psychologist speaking. Then we had a occupational therapist video campaign. Same template. It's just exact same template. But we started it on the ground. We came to social media. Then the media came in.
Wow.
They wanted to speak to us. Then when the media comes in, there is an attention from the government. And the government will call us. So social media has played a very vital role there because we were just banging our heads against the wall. But because of social media, the media noticed us. I think the mainstream media is waiting for stories with some merit because in my, it's my wishful thinking maybe. I think the journalists in mainstream media are also sick and tired of doing this tried and tested tropes of those political debates. I think they do want to address genuine issues. Just that, they have to say to the gallery that they think, gives them the TRP. But media really helped us with Together We Can. And the government stepped in, but the government again, did nothing. Then we went to court because in this particular case, we don't need a trust to go to court. As individual parents itself, we have the locus to approach without a trust. So we three mothers, me and two others, we went to court and filed a PIL. And the same old story is going on, So that's how it is. But the fact is that my having been part of two successful, I would call Together We Can also successful because we have been able to do a lot of things. The Child Rights Commission has passed orders. We have achieved a lot of things. But having been part of these two campaigns, I really am a big fan of social media now. Big fan of social media now because there are people all over the world waiting to connect with you on issues. And when you come out and speak about it, they inbox you, they come to your DM, they retweet, they reply to you, and they give you ideas, they give you pointers, they have contacts, they allow you to use them. It's not always about money. It's about the collective effort and how something can be suddenly pushed beyond the ordinary level that it is working in. So that is the learning for me. But social media, using the social media, it has to be coming from the heart. You have to really like and enjoy working with the people that you are part of. If there is a kind of a bad negative feelings or competition or something like that, it will not click. I think I have that is my learning out of both of these things.
That's actually a brilliant learning, and you are one of the few people who have something positive to say about the social media. Considering the impact that you had, we have to take your word for it, and it is your weighted gold kind of a word it is. Thank you so much for that. Shilpa ji, I have a question for you. It's a little different. You've spent almost all your life outside India. So as a non-resident Hindu, how do you look at and connect with India?
That's a very common question asked to me always. In Dubai and in India, they keep asking me like, you were born and brought up in Dubai, but Actually, I was born in Bombay. When I was 1 year old, I shifted to Dubai with my parents and sister. And, people ask, like, how do you know so much about Indian culture and how do you promote all this? Like, you've been away with, away from your country. The thing is that I should thank my parents who brought me up with the right values and who taught me, our traditions and rituals and culture right from beginning. My mother, she doesn't even step out of the house without looking at the Rahu Kala, so she's a person like that. We used to never use shampoos, at our home. We used to use the hibiscus, the leaf of the hibiscus. She used to grind that and use it as shampoo. It's only now that she has left me, like now 20 years it's been. After that only I started using shampoo, and you can see the result. I've lost all my hair. So the thing is that, like, all the things what they taught us, and they send me for classes for Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. In fact, that was out of my own interest. And then, of course, I was trained in the Indian classical dance forms, Bharatanatyam, Mohiniyattam, Kuchipudi, and Kathakali, and the Carnatic music, and I play the veena as well. So all these, brought in a sense of discipline in me, and a thirst for, our culture, our tradition, our temples. Even those days when I used to dance, I used to research a lot. We used to never have things like Google, internet, social media, nothing, So whenever I used to go to holidays, I used to take books and read and all that. So, when we see these sculptures in the temples, like with 4 hands, say a Devi is having like 2 hands up and 2 hands below, that was actually signifying a movement, not that the Devi had 4 hands. Wow. Actually, those days there was no video to be, the video equipment to take that movement. So they just carved it and kept. So that movement is shown as the carving, So like that, so many interesting facts, where I found out that dance and music is also a science, not actually an art. It's also a science. When you catch a veena in your hand, it's actually the dancer's, measurement, where she has to hold her hands while dancing, not close to the chest or not far away. It should be just, this distance. So these are the small things I learned while growing up in Dubai and coming for my holidays. And thanks to Amar Chitrakatha, and from there I started, and then moved on to Swami Vivekananda and Prabhupada, and so of course thanks to all that. And I feel that our Indian culture and the Hindu Dharma has a lot to contribute to the world peace, basically because we not only pay our obeisance and respect to the Creator, but also His creations, like the plants, animals, human beings. We contribute a lot. We give respect to all these things. So recently I took a class for small children on temples, basically. So, they are just like me. They're all like Dubai born and brought up kids. Wow. And the same enthusiasm I can see in them. And they were asking me all kind of questions, So they were asking, one question they asked me was, why are we spending money on temples? Why can't we give this to poor people? It's a very valid question. And I think most of us must have faced this question from people. Why are you spending money on temples? Why not give it to poor people? See, the answer is that traditionally temples were actually built for service. Service not only to the Lord, but also to the Lord's creations. So you will not find a line of beggars or, poor people in a movie theater or in a, say a school or a public office. No, you will find where in front of temples. So there people are there to serve, and people are there to receive that service as well. So temples are very important. Temples are actually our lives. Indian lives were based around temples. Temple was the center of our lives. So that is the importance of temples. And as far as Sabrimala is concerned, many people ask, like, why women cannot enter. Why not? Why don't you leave the devotees? That is one way of praying. So leave them to that. If you're not, agreeing to it, you can go to another temple. So that is the beauty of Hinduism, and that is the beauty of our Indic culture, where each and every faith, each and every ritual, each and every religion is given its own space, and we need to learn to respect that, each and every faith. So that's not very difficult, I think.
Thank you so much, Shilpa-ji. I think we are now ready to take audience questions. So let me see. We have a question from Abhishek Banerjee. He asks, a lot of anti-Hindu campaigns are couched in language against sexism or against pollution or against civic issues like traffic. Because Hindus are very accommodating by nature, a lot of Hindus I meet on social media are falling for the propaganda against everything, from Sabarimala to Kavadiyas. If you argue back, it takes too many words and people say something like Gyan mat do. How do you effectively get the message out? Who wants to take this?
I think Padma can answer.
Yeah, Padma ji.
Yeah. See, my golden rule is anybody says Gyan mat do, mute and block that person. Because the day you stop looking for Gyan is the day you die.
Wonderful. Very, very well said.
A child who's born is learning from the day he takes his first breath, the day he takes his last. Somebody says Gyan mat do, he's already dead. His mind is dead. I unplug, I do not waste my time. But the fact is this, many of the people who do this Gyan mat do facade are actually people who want to look cool, who are into peer pressure, and who feel that their social group is behaving in a certain way and giving out certain messages, and they have to somehow adhere to that message to be included in that group and be cool. And always my message to such people is see, first of all, what irritates me most is people who refuse to read. So if you want everything given to you in the form of a pill, somebody grinds up everything, extracts all the best things and given to you in the form of a pill, then you're a lazy person. But can't help it, we meet lazy person people also. So I try my best to say that, what were the benefits of this particular ritual that we are talking about. If something you say, if a Kanvarya has taken a vrat and he is moving towards that, what is it that he gets out of it? And every village that he passes through, every road that he takes, everybody who serves food to them, everybody who gives them that little bit of money to say that take this as my chadhava, what is the benefit, what is the domino effect that comes into society and for the Kanvarya himself? And what right do we have to take it away from somebody? We might have achieved. See, there is a saying that the English Britishers have probably used for centuries, and something that we have not picked up from them, remaining everything we have picked up, is noblesse oblige. That is, the nobility has to have an obligation to to serve to the people who are not noble enough. That is something that we have that is something that was there in our core of our culture, that anybody who had excess of anything, even if it is gyan, even if it is money, even if it is food, if it is clothes, he used to share it out. So if you think that you are secure in your life and that you are you are having a cool life where your traffic is most important, spare a minute to think about that person who's walking. He does not have half of what you might have. And this is probably giving him the fulfillment that he would otherwise not get. What right do we have? Somebody says, Shivling pe, why are you wasting milk on a Shivling? Why don't you feed the poor? That poor person who will probably get his thirst quenched by that one glass of milk for one time, is also calling that Sadashiv sitting there. And he wants to, when he gets some money, he'll spare it and pour that milk.
True.
Because he is offering his love and affection to the Lord, who is carrying him in the palm of his hands and taking him through crisis. There is a narrative that our acharyas have built. That narrative includes a lot of accessories, a lot of stories, art, color, paintings, sensory inputs. See, my son has sensory issues. That's when I have really understood how soothing a temple is. That is the place where he is the calmest. You know, the smells, the sounds, the sights, the lights, and everything in a temple is designed to apply to a person's mind and calm him down, make him receptive to the knowledge that is being given to him through the paintings and the mantras. So whenever somebody says that this is not relevant anymore, I tell them to please take a step back and think, what are the benefits that somebody who's doing this is receiving? And do you have a right, or is it right to remove those benefits from that person? And if removing that ritual or something from that person will do some great social good, which far outweighs, the small benefits that an individual gets, yes, we are willing to consider it. We are willing to consider it, but you have to first have the courtesy to prove to me why something that I do for my personal benefits needs to be stopped just because it inconveniences you.
Very well said. Thank you, Padma ji. Anjali ji, I would like you to answer a question by Neha Srivastava ji. She asks, through Ready to Wait, we now have a template to work on issues that are in the court. However, there are a lot of issues that are just modifying public opinions, which often leads to Hindu leaders falling over backwards to accommodate the objections of atheist activists. How do we deal with that? For example, the current attacks on Kavariyas. Anjali ji?
Yeah, even Ready to Wait also faced a kind of a, blockage, or a kind of we really felt confused and perplexed to tackle the same issue of people, the atheists from our side. That is a kind of atheists from the Hindu side is unable to understand and agree. They don't have to agree, but allow us to voice our opinion. So I think that is because even our basic Indian democratic, post-independent India is almost breeding more and more individuals through the education system and all to people who are completely guided by the Western notions of every Western ideas. So even in the Hindu side also, to look cool and to be intellectual. So in general, to be an intellectual, you need to be an atheist. If you are a person who is doing puja part, or who is actually standing for the native traditions, who is going for his family's ancestral rituals, he is somehow would be looked down by everybody as some gav ke person. This gav ki ladki and shahar ki ladki shown in the movies, that difference in narrative, that is a kind of thing which is actually always, and the discourse in India has been always one-sided. The people on Hindu side have been sidelined a lot. So being sidelined, they were struggling to find out a space for them to get them to heard. So in course of time, they also got, I think, a bit, the politicians and the thought leaders also got influenced by their want for gaining the approval of that atheist liberal, that mainstream notions, which will make them look like an intellectual. So in order to look like an intellectual, they have been telling this. So first step to break that notion, first step to make our side to be heard, is to tell the world that, see, this thirst for being looking an intellectual by being an atheist and dissing everything what our ancestors has been done, that is not that cool. We need to tell that firmly, that it's not that cool anymore. It has been, may have been cool in a different India, but now it's not. Then once it is not becoming that cool, I think now already in Twitter and all, I think being an atheist is not that cool. So the first step of tackling that difficulty of Hindu leaders also to, to move away from the atheist narratives or the, that one first step is already we have overcame, I think. And about this, even the Kanvadia issue, basically Kanvadias are coming from going through a very volatile area, like that is, Western UP. It has been a highly volatile area in communal terms for long. And the demography also is very much negative for the Kanvadia Yatra to be peaceful. So with that, when we analyze the Kanvadia issue, we need to put this background, the actual situation of the setting where the Kanvadias are walking through, that has to be put into perspective first. Without considering this aspect, I saw in Twitter people comparing Sabarimala and Kanvadiyas and telling, see, in Sabarimala every year the Ayyappa devotees are walking and millions of Ayyappa devotees are coming. Nowhere you saw an issue. But there is one difference, which is that in Kerala or in Tamil Nadu, I have been seen a lot of Ayyappa devotees from Tamil Nadu and all traveling in train, and I have been co-passenger. And I have seen Ayyappa devotees I'm from Malabar, and from Malabar, almost a lot of people from Kannur and a lot of people will be coming for Sabarimala, and they will be doing Vradam for 41 days. So that entire period, even the bus conductor of in the bus which I used to go to my high school, he used to be an Ayyappa devotee always. Then I remember we being careful not to break his Vradam by even unnecessarily touching in that crowded bus. We were very conscious. So that kind of conscious as an ordinary person from that particular place, that it was not just my individual consciousness, but I got that consciousness from the other girls who were around me. So that kind of consciousness is being shown by the people around in the public. When the Ayyappas go for their pilgrimage, the people really cooperate. That's why there is no problem. Yes. It's not just that the Ayyappas are so peaceful, they are non-violent, so everything is fine. So in Kanvadia problem, the actual problem, what happened is the setting where they are going through, the Western UP, there even the most, there you cannot just blame the Kanvadias for all the issues, because the basic setting is different from the setting through which Ayyappas has been going. See, look at the number of people who have been arguing that they should have been behaved politely, they should not be violent, violence has no place, so this tradition has to be stopped. All these people are telling that because their cars had to wait in the traffic, because they felt like it's so nasty to see all these unwashed people going in groups through their roads, where these car drivers, the people with the cars, are the rightful people to travel. There are two things there. One is this: the people who are watching the Kanvadias should be compassionate to Kanvadias. Then they also will behave well. Nowhere two hands can break. One single hand can make a clap. One thing is that. The second thing is the Kanvadia people, what all facilities are there on the roads for the Kanvadia people to walk. Even a pedestrian, normal person who would like to walk is unable to walk freely and safely in a road. And even in Delhi, Chanakya, that Connaught place, last year, when I tried to, after coming in Germany, it became so difficult for me to not follow traffic rules. So when I tried to cross a road through the zebra crossing, I had to wait almost 15 minutes. Not because that there is no zebra crossing or anything, but the vehicles don't care. So considering that, I think the people who drive vehicles in Delhi, since they are not following that traffic zebra lines, how can they argue about some kind of people walking along through the sides of the road being so inconvenient and lawless? That is the thing. So when we ask these kind of questions, They will fight. The atheists might fight, but the Hindu leaders, for example, the BJP leaders, I think they need to bring this kind of an attitude. Basically, they lack that attitude. I don't know why, but maybe a relentless talking and more vocal, more and more people being bold to talk all these bitter truths.
True.
May empower the politicians also to understand that whatever is shouted by the Lutyens Delhi elitists are not the only narrative which can be done and which can gain support. That is one thing. And another thing is that politicians always will have the compulsions to please the ones who will promote them, or whose promotion will be valuable for them. So for that, we cannot help. What we can do is we also become somebody whose promotions will be valuable for the politicians. For that, I think the social media, people in social media can unite together like us and build institutions and become more, influencers. That is another one way for modifying. And when the majority public comes, that is also seen this Ready to Wait. We got a lot of flake from various quarters, including the Hindutva side, who still haven't ever voiced their officially are not bold enough to tell what is their stand in Sabarimala case. So far, their organizations have not expressed or declared their official stand in this case. So even after we could build a narrative, even after we could actually turn a kind of, even get a positive, appreciative comments from the court, the politicians are yet to support us. So I think the compulsions of politicians, but of late, maybe in the last week and all, we could see, and slightly many are coming up. Like we didn't mean that way, that the organization has told this also, that kind of. So success of a movement and turning the tide by when you feel that there can be a victory, then a lot of people moved to this. So building popular, real public support, building more and more materials, not just written, every kind of materials, and make the public aware of the nuances, bring more and more popular support, and that will force the politicians to change their opinion, because they really are the people who dance according to the majority's opinion.
True, very true. It is already 8:41, and much as I would like to extend it for us together, we will have to put an end to this particular conversation for now. But perhaps we can convince these wonderful women to join us again sometime in the future. Thank you, Anjali ji, Padma ji, and Shilpa ji, for being so generous with your thoughts and time. We wish you success in all your endeavors and hope that you continue to inspire people. Thanks are also due to my wonderful audience for their engaging participation and patience. We hope that you found today's edition of Indic Chat informative and enriching, and we look forward to your participation in our next edition. The video of this interaction will be uploaded on the YouTube channel of Indic Academy very soon. I would urge all of you to follow Indic Academy on Twitter and Facebook, and also look us up on indicacademy.org. I look forward to seeing you all in the next edition. Till then, dhanyawad, shine on, namaste.
Thank you.